Hello everyone. My name is Will Witt. I'm 6'4". I'm a white, Caucasian, American male, and my pronouns are he, they. I'm really happy to be here on the Microsoft Live podcast.
Hi.
Micro and Soft Live.
Excuse me. You just interrupted a woman. Hi, I'm Amala. I'm 5'7". I have brown braids, and I work as a senior engineer here at Microsoft. I go by she, her. It's great to be here.
Oh, I also have blonde hair. I forgot to mention that.
I'm so confused. But hi, I'm Taylor. I'm 6'1", and I have blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a light purple shirt from Oldro, which is a great Instagram account that you should follow. And I work at Microsoft as a janitor.
Taylor, I appreciate that you used your real height.
So did I.
It's actually 6'1" and some change.
I used my real height.
6'2" with shoes.
6'4".
Did you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay.
6'4", 180 pounds, 0% body fat.
The reason we opened up today, Will and Amala Live, with that skit is because we found this video out of a Microsoft presentation of some sort, and this is how they introduce themselves. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natalie Gadilla. I'm a Caucasian woman with long blonde hair, and I go by she, her. I'm a product marketing lead here at Microsoft and co-host of the podcast Security Unlocked with this guy.
Yes, that would be me. Hello, everyone. I'm Nick Fillingham. I'm a Caucasian man with glasses and a beard. I go by he, him, and I'm a security evangelist here at Microsoft. We are so excited to be with you.
I forgot to mention
That's great. You forgot to mention what?
I'm clean shaven.
Oh, okay.
Well, since yesterday.
I forgot my pronouns.
I have 5 o'clock shadow. No, you said, or maybe you didn't.
I didn't. I should have.
What are they?
Drag gun.
Oh, wow. Mine are Let's Go Brandon. That's mine.
Let's go / Brandon.
Let's go / Brandon.
Yeah.
That's just my name. First name, Brandon. Last name, Let's Go.
I just think it's so, is this how we're meant to introduce ourselves now, ladies and gentlemen? And let's sort of break this down. Do they describe how they look for people who are blind that are listening in on the video? That's what I'm assuming.
I think so. But if so, then I'm very offended that they didn't also use sign language to sign what their pronouns are for deaf people watching.
Yeah.
Well, blind people, I mean, they wouldn't even know what the color blonde is. Right?
Well, it depends on when you became blind.
But if they were born blind, like you wouldn't know what blonde is anyway. So someone describing, hey, I'm blonde, they wouldn't know what blonde is.
Right.
Right?
But there's different, I don't know, there's a spectrum of blindness. So I'm assuming it still makes sense.
We're talking about legally blind.
There's legally blind. There's people who weren't born blind but became blind. There's people who are blind but can still see, like, you know, colors and light and things like that. So I'm assuming it works for blind people.
Well,
for
I don't
a
think
lot
they're
of blind
making
people.
It for the people who can see color. They're making it for.
I don't know the logistics of this tomfoolery, but it is tomfoolery. That's what I know.
You hear the thing about Helen Keller not being real?
I have heard the theories of Helen Keller not being real. Does anybody have any strong opinions on that?
I don't know. It's tough. I mean, that is a pretty remarkable story.
That is very remarkable.
I hope it's true.
I hope it's true too. I mean, I've only heard a few people say that it's not true.
There was that girl crying on TikTok about Helen Keller, saying that Helen Keller isn't real. You haven't seen this?
I've not seen
She
this
was
one.
in tears, just like crying her eyes out about how Helen. She's like, I don't care. She's not effing real.
That's my wife.
She's like yelling at her mom.
Really
but
funny.
anyways, I think what this points to, I hope not, but what it's pointing to is that there's going to be a massive cultural shift in the way that we interact with each other, especially if this is how we're starting to introduce ourselves these days.
No, only idiots are going to do that. Only people who actually care about that kind of stuff are going to do
But there's a lot of people who actually care about that stuff. And then what those people do is they then try to compel you to do the same. You know?
No one's going to make me do that, ever. No one's going to make me go into a room and say what I look like.
But they will try.
They can... I mean, I go in any room I go to, I lie about my height, but this is different. This is
Got to have standards somehow.
yeah, exactly, right? That's fine. I do that anyway, but I'm not going to go in and tell people my hair color and my pronouns. Like, just look at me. You
Just
can
look
figure
at
it
you.
out.
What if they can't look at you? This is the whole point.
Well, in that video, there were people looking at them.
Well, what I'm pointing to is the fact that we are trying to alter our cultural I guess, colloquialisms to this sort of placating to people who want their safe space or don't want to be offended. And now we're going to have to, I can't imagine how long this goes if we continue to add things on to this introduction. It's going to be like, hi, I'm Amala. I'm 5'7". I'm black. I'm female identifying. My pronouns are she, her. You may not refer to me as white, even though I am half white. Like, it's going to be like this crazy list of things.
I don't think it's going to get to that point. I think these are just dumb people virtue signaling on a show
who also work for Microsoft, one of the biggest corporations in America.
Yeah, but it's not going, like, there's no way people are going to do this. There's just no way.
I said that a long time ago when it came to pronouns.
Listen,
there's no way.
There will be people who do this. There's
Okay.
no doubt people will do this, but there's no way that it's going to be some like thing that they're going to force us into doing. I know I'm never going to do it. I know you two are never going to do it.
There's no way that the gay rights activists will add like L and B to their acronym. And then a T? No way. That would never happen.
And
then
then
a
a Q,
QIA, 2
and then a 2S.
S.
Listen,
I could never see
but
that
that's
happening.
like they
Plus.
They can do what they want, you know. They can add any words or whatever. That's their thing, you know.
Okay.
Versus like, my thing is I'm not going to say.
Yeah, but
fair
the
enough.
point is that there's going to be mounting cultural pressure from institutions like as big as Microsoft
Yeah.
to try to normalize this stuff. And they're trying to shove it down our throats and make
The
us.
final step is normalization.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yuri
anyone watches that
Bezmenov would
video and
say.
thinks it's normal.
I think that's
That is
wishful
But a
thinking.
lot of things
if
have
it was
become-
normal, we wouldn't be talking about it on the show. It is abnormal. For
Yeah,
sure.
but this is, I mean, like Tomla's point with Yuri Bezmenov, it's the effort is to normalize things that were not normal before. And
Right.
so this is clearly an attempt to do so. And there's plenty of things that are quote unquote normal now that the woke people have made normal, like putting gender pronouns in your bio.
Right.
That wasn't normal 2 years ago.
Not at
and now
all.
it's normal.
Yeah,
true.
yeah. And what the silver lining on this is that the more ridiculous that the extreme left gets, the more people start to wake up and the pendulum starts to swing back. We've seen that in the recent elections out of Virginia with Winsome Sears and Glenn Youngkin, both taking wins for the right. But after that, we've seen a lot of backlash from the political left. Not surprising at all. They're seeing the tide start to turn, and they're not turning in their favor. So now what we've seen is this massive narrative to say the reason that these two people have won the elections in Virginia is because there is an ongoing fight against CRT and the invisible CRT that isn't being taught in K through 12. Now, after Youngkin and Sears won their elections, I want to go to this little Twitter thread that was put out by Twitter, a compilation called Understanding the Academic and Legal Concept Known as Critical Race Theory. So Twitter saw obviously what happened with the elections. They put out this massive thread on their page about CRT to educate people about CRT, because the narrative is now the only reason that these two people won is because we have fear-mongered the political right in regard to CRT. We fear-mongered suburban moms. We fear-mongered the uneducated. And now they're voting for the right because they feel like the right is going to proceed with their interests of banning CRT. I went through every single one of the articles that is listed on this Twitter thread, which I will show you here. The only one that was remotely giving an accurate depiction of what CRT is, what the true battle is on the right and on the left, is one out of my goodness, the Wall Street Journal. All the rest of these are leftist propaganda articles talking about how the only thing CRT is really doing is pointing out systemic racism, and it's an attempt to treat history truthfully in the American classroom.
Systemic racism by telling them that little white kids are born racist.
Right.
No wonder all these moms voted against these people because they were being told that their kids were racist just for being white. Of course they voted against that. Are you joking? It's like insane to think that they would stick around for that. No one wants to be called racist. No one wants to be told that their kids are racist just because of the color of their skin. It's obvious. And also if these people, so many of these people come out and say, we're not even teaching CRT. That's a thing that you see everywhere. It's like, okay, if we're not teaching CRT, then why can't we just ban it? Let us ban it. If it's not even a real thing,
Well, you can't
just
ban
let
it
us
because then you're not teaching real history.
Right.
Yeah,
But we're
right.
not teaching it.
But we're not doing it.
Now, I saw a great tweet from Stephen Miller. I got it right here. It's
Sure.
critical race theory is a non-existent conspiracy theory, and if you don't want it in schools, it's because you are racist and don't want your kids being taught history. That's the argument that they've settled on.
It's not real, but also you're a racist.
Yeah.
You're not wanting it.
It's not a thing, but if you ban it, then you're a racist and you don't want to teach real history. So that's your very own argument says that you believe that CRT is teaching real history, but you're also saying, you start your argument by saying it's not real.
Right.
So which is it?
None of these people will ever admit that they're wrong about anything.
They won't.
That's like you go into Washington, D.C., and you see these people who live around there, the policymakers, the lobbyists, and the people just live in the swamp. I mean, these are the people who will never admit that anything is wrong. So these people who are creating CRT and pushing it and creating the programs and education departments and all that, these people will never admit that they are wrong. That's just the culture of this political world.
They won't. And it's important to look at the different cogs in the media propaganda machine that is coming out after these elections. It is crazy that now every single media corporation is stepping in lockstep saying, well, it's just a legal theory. It's not being distilled down for K through 12. It's not being taught in schools. In fact, I've never heard the term critical race theory before the political right started talking about it. It's the same talking points over and over again. Critical race theory has been around since the 1970s. All we're trying to do is talk about real history. If you're against real history, then you have no place in American education. I wish somebody would make a compilation of all of them saying this, because you would have 100,000 videos of the same people saying the same things over and over and over.
Yeah, in the 1970s is when things started getting stupid. So, yeah, it has been around since the 1970s.
It has, yes,
It makes
absolutely.
perfect sense.
And they've now, over the past few decades, again, when I was working for the left, and that was how many years? That's 3-4 years ago now, I was teaching critical race theory to kids. So it's not some recent phenomenon that the right has just started talking about in a year. We've been talking about it. We have been pushing these teachings. We have been pushing this ideology to children. I was going around to middle schools and high schools doing it. It's always been a thing. It's always been there since the 1970s.
But to your point, or maybe to their point, did you know that it was critical race theory that you were teaching? Did you have those words to describe it at that time?
No, and that's the thing, is that they are so entrenched in the idea of actually seeing the letters CRT that they refuse to admit that the foundings of their teachings, the things that they are saying, are fundamentally critical race theory. They are taught in critical race theory. They are inscribed in the critical race theory doctrine. Any book that you find will have those same words, the diversity, the equity, the inclusion. And that's exactly what your kids are being taught in school. So to say we are not teaching critical race theory simply because the words critical race and theory are not in the curriculum is completely disingenuous.
Should just ban it. Just ban it. Even if it's not real, just ban it. Who cares? It's not real, ban it. It's like if people aren't murdering people, we should still ban murder, you know?
Right.
In case someone wants to do it. It should still be not allowed.
Right.
So ban critical race theory
I mean, the logic
in case
is...
someone wants to do it, and then we ban it. That makes perfect sense.
I mean, the logic is, it's pretty sound.
It is sound logic. That might be my greatest point I've ever made.
That might be your greatest point. But in case you are still on the fence about whether or not CRT, DEI, SEL, any of those things that you want to call it, any acronym, let's look at this video from an Indiana school administrator talking about critical race theory in his schools.
I'm the science coach and admin in the largest public school district in Indiana. I'm in dozens of classrooms a week, so I see exactly what we're teaching our students. When we tell you that schools aren't teaching critical race theory, that it's nowhere in our standards, that's misdirection. We don't have the quotes and theories as state standards per se. We do have critical race theory in how we teach. We tell our teachers to treat students differently based on color. We tell our students that every problem is a result of white men, and that everything Western civilization built is racist. Capitalism as a tool of white supremacy. Those are straight out of Kimberly Crenshaw's main points, verbatim, in critical race theory, the writings that formed the movement. This is in math, history, science, English, the arts, and it's not slowing down. If students of color have lower reading scores, it's because of inequity. Therefore, we take from the white students and give to the color students. That's Richard Delgado, straight out of CRT and Introduction. All teaching is political, with reality and facts taking the back seat. That's Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who outlined how she saw critical race theory fleshed out in public schools in 1995. When schools tell you that we aren't teaching critical race theory, it means one thing. Go away and look into our affairs no further. It isn't about transparency, it isn't about cultural relevance, it's race essentialism, painted to look like the district cares about students of color. We call it anti-racism, so you feel bad if you disagree with our segregationist pedagogy. It's taking advantage of kids' vulnerability and parents' inactivity to preen over social snake oil schemes designed to create division. Parents, when we tell you critical race theory isn't taught in our schools, we're lying. Keep looking.
There's literally nothing critical about critical race theory. It is the opposite of critical. It is useless.
There's no critical thinking involved.
Yeah, literally. It's just, yeah. It's What's the inverse of critical? What would be the word?
It's a great question.
Uncritical.
Uncritical. Yeah, I guess so. I'm trying to think of the exact opposite word. I can't think of one. It should be called uncritical race theory.
Anyways, but this is, I mean, how much more evidence do you need? How many more leaked curriculums do you need to see? How many more leaked teacher and administrator Zoom meetings do you need to see? How many more school board meetings do you need to see to have your mind be changed about the fact that critical race theory is being taught in your schools? And I don't know how you combat this when every time you try to bring it up, you're simply told, well, it's not being taught in schools. It's not being taught in schools. They don't qualify their arguments. They don't give any examples of where it's not being taught in schools. And in fact, we have plenty of evidence to prove that it is. How do you combat people who just blatantly deny what you are accusing them of when you have evidence?
All of these things, this critical race theory, is all it means to make these white leftists who believe in this kind of stuff make them feel good. It's all just to make them feel good. They feel so good about being anti-racist. Like the same with immigration and the same with allowing illegal immigrants into this country. It makes them feel good, even though it hurts wages, even though crime goes up in communities where you have illegal immigrants coming into. It doesn't matter. It makes them feel good to say, oh yeah, I helped this guy from El Salvador, and now he's a cook for me, and now I'm so happy that this is happening. And it makes them feel good about it, even though the repercussions are bad for the country. The repercussions with this critical race theory and anti-racism are bad for America, but it makes them feel good about it in a selfish and vain way. So they keep pushing for it.
That's exactly what it... I mean, it's exactly the case, and then all of it gets covered up. The same thing with immigration. Now, that leads us to our next segment, which is an interview with Tim Ballard. He is on the front lines when it comes to human trafficking in America and has a lot of details in regard to his own story. He's actually filming stories of us with us today here at PragerU, so that's a video that will come out soon for your eyes and your eyes only. So, let's get into the interview with Tim. Hi, everybody. Today on the show, we have a very special guest by the name of Tim Ballard. You know him as the founder of OUR, Operation Underground Railroad, where he is fighting against human sex trafficking, child trafficking, you name it. He is on the front ground of it. Tim Ballard, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me back. It's my favorite show to be on.
That's too much. This is your third time being on.
Third time. I should be on here every week. But
seriously, no, we need to get a Tim Ballard segment.
The invitations just don't come. So
they must be getting lost in the mail because we're sending them all the time.
We will change that. We will change that.
Someone's got to fire
the pigeon that I sent out must not have landed.
But we want to bring you on to talk about the things that I think aren't being talked about, the things that you specialize in, which is things that aren't being talked about, even though it affects so many people, and people just have no idea what's actually going on. So, because the politics right now, I mean, every day it's something new, it's something crazy, it's things that will be in the headlines for an hour, and then an hour later it's done, there's something new. But the things that you're focused on with OUR and everything else is really impactful and is having long-lasting effects. What is some of the work that you're doing right now that people aren't hearing about?
So we are actually killing it right now. We've grown from about 20 to close to 90 employees in the last 10 months. We are in 30 countries, and we're empowering law enforcement. We're giving them the tools, training, aftercare services. Oftentimes they will ask us to go undercover to play the role of a sex tourist, because Americans, or a Western face, is the client that the trafficker is looking to service. And what's shocking is the amount of children being exploited. It's in the millions of children, right? And so coming home from an operation and then watching, the CNN headline or whatever headline, and it's like, this is what's important. And then you read the headline, it has nothing to do with the body of the paper because it's just clickbait. It's all fake. It's this kind of just pandering to what people want. They want a dopamine hit. They want to be outraged, right? So we'll give them outrage. And on both sides and every side, and we're missing truth. And so what I would say to our politicians and to our culture is, every decision you make, every story you decide to write, every policy you put forth, the first and the last question should be this: how does it affect children, our most precious resource? Because children can't riot. Children can't march and spray paint, child lives matter. They can't do that. And so they sit back and no one is listening to them. From our border politics, which I hope we can get into, to our solutions to the coronavirus. both of those two things alone, right? We talk about it, but the thing we don't talk about is how did it affect kids?
Right.
And if we asked ourselves, how does it affect kids? I promise you, our policies on the border, our policies of how to respond to the pandemic would be completely different because we are killing our kids.
Well, it's like the same people, like the people who are the hawkish war criminals or war people in Congress right now who are talking about, going into other countries. They don't talk about how the children react when their cities are bombed, right? It's like similar things, and no one ever thinks about the children with how things are going. Let me ask you, before we get into some of the other stuff, I'm interested to know, when you're going and seeing all this stuff and seeing the carnage and the disgusting people and all of this and the horrible tragedies, how do you personally deal with those kinds of things when you see them? Like how does your mind recover from that, and how do you use that?
So, it's so hard. It's so hard, and it doesn't get easier. I was just working a case in a cartel controlled region of the world where this trafficking organization was selling kids as young as 6 years old for sex. And how they were getting the kids was recruiting them out of the foundation that they had set up, a nonprofit to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, in exchange for access to their children. And what was shocking was the first one or the second undercover meet we had when they were going to tell us what they had, they showed up with the police. And I thought that it was a blue on blue and we were going to get arrested and have to explain, no, we're working with another division in your country. No, the police were giving cover in marked units, lights flashing, escorting the trafficker to a meeting to sell children. Whoa. So this is the kind of situation that you're in where you look at this and you think the only hope that child had of rescue is on the side of the rapist. So what hope do they have? And this is where I'm so grateful that we have this foundation and partners who are willing to work with us, because we become the only hope for that. So case after case after case, right, to answer your question, that weighs on you when you consider the millions of people, juxtapose it with the headlines of the day, which aren't even talking about this, right? Leaving the kids completely abandoned. And it rips your heart out. It rips your heart out. It messes with your head. It messes with your emotions. So it's very, very difficult. We have therapists for all of our team. We provide all that kind of training that they need, because it's going into the darkest places in order to be able to perform any kind of liberating action.
Right. Well, let's breach something that people don't want to talk about. That is the immigration crisis that's happening right now. Yeah. Mainstream media, at least, is not reporting on it. And I think not only are they not reporting on the influx of illegal immigrants, but they're not reporting on the child trafficking that is happening at the border itself.
Right.
What is your view on it? What have you experienced in this surge?
So this is one of the most tragic things happening in our generation right now. I spent 10 years as a special agent undercover operator on that southern border. So I understand exactly how it works, right? And I'll start with the wall, right? It was such this politicized thing, Trump's vanity project and blah, blah, blah. And Senator Harris talking about how we don't need to build the wall any further because all the interdiction, whether it's drugs or children, is happening at the ports of entry. So we don't need to build the wall. And I'm just listening to this thinking, who is in charge here? You cannot congratulate an interdiction at the port of entry without simultaneously congratulating the wall, because the wall creates the port of entry.
Right.
It's like Disneyland does it, and it's not controversial, right? You want to flow traffic. Why? It's the last chance these kids have of rescue. Because once they get into what is the highest demand country for child sex, it's over. It's gone. They're identityless. They're nameless. They're done. And so it's their last chance. I've worked with the cabinet level at Mexican authorities, and they say the same thing. Build the wall. It's the last hope they have, right? And so it's just so backwards, because it's not about truth. It's about, how could I poke Trump in the eye? Because he wants to build this thing. It saves children. So first, and I can cite countless. I wrote an op-ed for Deseret News. You can go check it out. Were personal cases I was involved in where barriers and the wall rescued children. You're not trying to keep foreign children out. You're trying to keep foreign children from landing in the evil grasps of our pedophile American monsters. Like you turn the whole argument on its head, right? So that's one. The second issue and now they're going to stop building the wall and allow traffickers to continue moving kids across. We are the demand. It's economics. We're the number one demand for child sex. We're number 3 destination for human trafficking countries. So traffickers want these kids into the United States. It's big money, right? So here's where it gets even more complex and more frustrating and tragic is our current policies on the border. I'll start with this. Human traffickers and human smugglers on the Mexican-U.S. border make about $14 million every single day.
Wow.
Now, how and why is this happening? They go to their clients in Central America and they say, look, pay us what you can and we'll get you across. If they can't pay, and I've been on the border and interviewed them, like I was raped 15 times because I didn't have enough money. So they sold me on the route or raped me right there or my child. What happens is once they get to the border, they take a child. Presumably these kids have been kidnapped. It's not hard to kidnap a kid in Mexico or Central America. And they pair that child with an adult and say, go in and tell the Border Patrol agent or the Customs and Border Protection officer that this is your child. Child, you tell them this is your mother. Why? Because we have this horrific policy that was born out of a court case called the Flores case that says that if you show up with your child, you, within 72 hours, you are going to be released into the United States with a notice to appear in an immigration court, backed up 3 or 4 years. 80% never show up, and now the kids, and they're in there. I've talked to these people, say, well, is this really your kid? It's like, no, they throw this kid at me, and they said, take the kid, call the number once you're across, and we'll pick the kid up. So the kids are being rotated and paired with others until they get these people across. But considering the fact that we are the highest market for child sex, eventually these kids are going to be exploited sexually. Teresa Ulloa, she runs the Latin American division for the International Coalition Against Human Trafficking. She estimates that 60% of those kids who are taken are also sexually abused along the way, because you get, again, it's high, it's lots of money, right? You can sell a bag of cocaine one time. You can sell these kids 20 times a day. It's very lucrative. So this is what's happening. I just read a stat recently from the U.S. government website where there are thousands of kids in custody, right? And remember before when Trump was in, it was all about kids in cages and all this stuff, right? Okay, it's a safe house is what it is, because those kids in cages are the lucky ones that came across, and the bright men and women in uniform on the border said, hey, something's wrong here. I don't think this kid is yours. And they were rescued and put into these places. Yes, there's a fence around it, just like there's a fence around my elementary school, right? And so it's, kids in cages, this and that. It's like, look, I would love for the venue to be nicer, but these kids were the ones that were plucked away from people who were not their parents. And then I saw this stat that I believe it's close to 1,000 kids right now in the care and custody of the United States who are between the ages of 0 and 5 years old. It's somewhere between 500 and 1,000. And then it goes up from there. Like once you're in your, it's like 16,000 from the ages of 14 to 17. Wow. I might be a little off on that, but the government has these posted. But then ask yourself this question: how on earth? I mean, how would you answer this question? How are there even 500 to 1,000 children ages 0 through 5, unaccompanied minors in the custody of the United States?
Right.
It is. Let me tell you why. Because these traffickers, so smugglers are those who will get paid just to get you in. Traffickers are more cynical, it's more criminal in that they're trying to sell these kids for sex. So all they have to do is take a 3-year-old, put them on a raft, push them over. The Border Patrol has to do their job and they're right to do it. It's what they're doing. They have no choice but to take that kid and put that kid in custody, in care of the United States. Now what? I've talked to a high official in the U.S. government who fights trafficking every day, and she told me, she says, Tim, it is harder to adopt a puppy from a pound than it is to go down to the port of entry and say, hey, my name's whatever, little Miguel Nunez is my nephew. I understand he's in your care and custody. Here's the documents. So easy to falsify. And there's so many kids, and the laws are requiring those kids can't stay there longer than 20 days, or they get or the government gets in trouble. We have all these false, arbitrary policies. And so when Uncle George shows up asking for little Miguel and just shows enough documentation and sign here to confirm that you really are his guardian, boom, gone, he's in.
Why is America the number one destination for this? Why is there such a demand here for this? Why is it different than other countries? Why is the culture of America so obsessed with this?
So it comes down to sex addiction, and it comes down to pornography, really, and what porn can do to the brain, right? A very small percentage of porn users become sex addicts to the point that they need more and more. But what happens to the brain, just like with marijuana, right? It's not the marijuana, it's the chemical reaction that marijuana creates. Same with pornography. It's not the naked bodies. What it is your brain releases dopamine. It feels really good, right? It's the sexual part of the brain that releases those chemicals that make people want to procreate and be in relationships. And so the porn is the counterfeit of that, right? And so when it's overstimulated, just like marijuana, eventually you have to graduate to cocaine or something stronger for the reaction. The regular adult porn isn't working. So they have to graduate to bestiality or younger,
right?
18, 17, 15. All of a sudden they're looking at 10-year-olds. Then they're on a plane to some high trafficking area in Southeast Asia or something looking for a 5-year-old. So that's how it happens. And so why America? Because America, it's going to be a developed country because the porn addiction is stemming from the incredible access we have to porn because of the internet. So you're going to go to a country that has mass internet access, first of all. And so which country has mass internet access, which is also the largest population?
Right.
It's America.
Exactly.
So I don't think there's anything like inherent in the DNA of Americans that make them more prone to this. It's just the accessibility and the population count together makes us the number one consumers.
And why is it not talked about talked about enough? Is it because talking about it does implicate the U.S. government in this trafficking, or what is the reason, you think?
I think there's several reasons why we don't talk about it. One, just go to Netflix and every second show is pornographic.
Right.
Like I go on looking for movies and it's like every movie is like full on sex. Like, what am I like? It's just so accessible, right? So any talk of sex addiction, which leads to doing anything to, and I'm very libertarian. Like I don't want to make porn illegal. That's not my. I think that we have freedoms, right? Of course, child exploitation, different story, right?
Right.
So I'm not for that, but I'm for the education. It's parents' jobs and guardians and grandparents to understand. If you do this, you can choose to do this. You can choose to watch this stuff, but just know what it might do to your brain, right? But the big industries that are creating this content, from the porn industries into even mainstream streaming services that are getting close to porn, if not porn itself, right? They don't like that. They don't want to be taught that the show Sex Life could be actually a drug, but I could make an argument scientifically that it is, that it is actually creating a chemical reaction and an addiction that can hurt people, can turn young boys into sex addicts and possibly into pedophiles, or turn girls into victims because they've been taught and desensitized. It's okay. It's okay to show skin. It's okay to, Hollywood, in this sense, is doing the job of traffickers.
Right. Traffickers
want to desensitize children. That's why they show them porn over and over and over again, so that when the client comes in, it's like, see how normal this is? The more we normalize the sex, right, the more that we're just doing the job for traffickers. Right. And now we have teachers, right, who are trying to teach first graders how to masturbate and teaching them about erections and body parts and showing pictures. If some guy was doing that to a child online, they could be arrested, a felony arrest.
Right.
Like, it's illegal to do that. And our teachers are now in some districts doing the same thing. And it's not only not illegal, it's encouraged. So we're so ass backwards right now. And our kids are the ones who are vulnerable.
Ah, gosh, I'm like getting chills. This is horrible. What does the average American do about this other than supporting your organization, Operation Underground Railroad? What can they do?
People got to get loud. They have to educate. They have to understand, for example, what sex addiction does. They have to understand that it leads to human trafficking. It's slavery. In the end, it's slavery, and it's a sliding scale, right? I feel like this content that's just so easily accessible is creating captivity for our children because they're being set up. And then I see the rawest form where a lot of them, millions of them, end up literally in captivity, being forced to be raped for money. So I think the key really is to get loud. And slavery was once legal in this country. I love history. I love trying to learn from history. So slavery was legal here one time for hundreds of years in this land of liberty. Such irony, right? The Declaration of Independence claiming all men are created equal while there's millions enslaved, right? How did that happen for hundreds of years in this country? More importantly, how did it end? I love Abraham Lincoln. I see you got a picture of him back there behind you. I love him. One of my favorite presidents. But he didn't raise his hand and say, "Hark, it's over. We're going to end this." It's not what happened. What happened was shows like this. They didn't have microphones and distribution capability, but it was on stages, pamphlets, speaking, books. They got loud. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was a book that went viral and one of the first times people were exposed. Like, wait, what? This is happening under our noses and we didn't really know about it? One of the most important stories in American history is when Harriet Beecher Stowe meets Abraham Lincoln in the executive mansion for the first time during the war. And he says to her, according to her son, he says to her, "So you're the lady who wrote the book that started this war." And so what was the beginning of the end of slavery? It wasn't the Civil War, because the Civil War was started over a different issue, at least the reason the North invaded.
Right.
Lincoln changed the purpose of the war to include liberating the captive because people got loud. And so that's what we need to do right now is recreate that movement for the modern day slave. And when I say modern day slave, I'm not just talking about the rawest form of kids in captivity being sold. I'm talking about our teenage kids who are dealing with this bombardment of cultural impurities that are making them slaves, or at least setting them up to be vulnerable to be enslaved. Whether it's even in just their mind and their inability to make good decisions, and before long they're in the hands of some creep, right? So I see that the only solution, the solution's never government, it never has been, right? I agree with Ronald Reagan. Government's usually the problem, not the solution. The people are the solution. It's getting here and talking with you. It's getting on other networks and talking, but the mainstream doesn't want to talk about it because they're backed by the big sex industry. And the last thing they want us to do is talk about this, right? Not to mention the fact that it's a closet crime. It's a closet sin. There's no profile. It's not the dirty, creepy, 600-pound grandpa that no, it is people that look like us and normal and teachers, educators, professionals.
Could be anyone.
High government officials.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, there is definitely pressure to keep this quiet because sex addiction, as it grows and grows, there's a whole movement trying to keep it quiet and quiet. We've got to conquer that by being loud.
You guys hear that? I mean, share this video. Share this interview with everyone you know so that they can see this and tell them and send it. If you share it on your social media, also send it to people. Send it to people and your friends, your family, and people who you might not even possibly like. Send it to them anyway, because I think everyone needs to hear this. Tim, it's been great having you on.
Thank you.
Third time. I'm looking forward to the fourth time already.
Yeah. Dude, tomorrow, let's do it.
Tomorrow? How long
We
are you
need
in
to
LA
keep talking
for?
about this. So.
How long are you in LA for?
I'm here till tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, by tomorrow night, this comes out tomorrow, which means that'll be tonight when this is coming out. It's kind of confusing time-wise, but I understand it. It's good to have you on, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks,
Love your
Tim.
show. Thank you.
Well, that was a great interview.
Yes,
really
it
happy
was.
to do it with Tim Ballard. He's a fantastic guy. He's been on the show before. A lot of times, actually. I did an interview with him during COVID. That was really impactful for a lot of people, too. So
Right.
I know that what he's doing is really important.
Yeah, I can't imagine to be on the front end of all of that and seeing that on a day-to-day basis. It's got to take a toll.
It'd be draining, for sure.
Very, very draining. But again, always silver lining to things. We talked about earlier in the show about the tides changing, and that was happening with the Virginia elections. We got all the backlash and went over that. But speaking of the tides turning, which we covered earlier in the show with the Virginia elections, here's another place where voters have really spoken about how they want their city to be run. Here is the article out of AP. Minneapolis voters reject replacing police with a new agency. Essentially what happened is the Health and Public Safety Commission out in Minneapolis proposed that we get rid of police departments for the most part, or at least stop dictating a quota on how many police officers are meant to be in the city based on population. And instead, they wanted things like social workers and mental health professionals to be able to respond to calls where they felt like police were not necessary. Now, Minneapolis voters were able to go and vote on this, and they voted no. We're keeping our police departments the exact same.
Well, luckily, idiotic ideas didn't take hold in Minneapolis. That's a good thing. So, I mean, the idea is so stupid
Yep.
that would have been such a blow to hear that this didn't go through, or that people actually voted to replace their police department. I mean, that would have been a crazy thing.
I mean,
to think that there are that many people who don't understand that would be, I mean, that's just like a complete lack of common sense and knowledge.
But so based on this article, it was a pretty tight race when it came to this particular amendment. There were several opponents who were very vocal in the news about it, and several supporters very vocal in the news about it. And if there is going to be any city where this would have come to fruition, it would have been Minneapolis. Like I said, this is where George Floyd met his unruly end at the hands of some police officers in the street. So why are you shaking your head?
Nothing.
Just keep going.
So if there was anywhere that something like this would happen, it would be in Minneapolis. So
yeah, and another
it's a good
interesting
sign.
thing to note is like the measure failed by a margin of 56 to 44.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, I have a map here of like the voting, how people voted. And
Right.
you see in North Minneapolis, which is predominantly black, the vote margin was much heavier against defunding the police, and the white rich areas are the ones that did vote for it. So the people who would be most affected by it, where
Right.
crime's higher in their communities, they reject the idea of they want more police, not less, which is exactly what we hear from our LAPD friends as well.
That's exactly the point. I mean, you look at these affluent neighborhoods where it's a lot of white people, these white leftists in these towns like in Minneapolis or in DC or in Los Angeles, and you'll find that they're all about this leftism. They're all about defunding the police and having illegal immigrants come in. Their communities have remained pretty intact since the 1960s, okay? Divorce rates are still pretty low. They're still pretty affluent. They're still pretty white. I mean, good schools, and they don't have to deal with these problems that the lower income communities are dealing with. They don't have to deal with illegal immigrants coming and moving into their districts. They don't have to deal with police crime and those kinds of things and defunding the police, what that would mean for their communities. It's people who are out of touch with reality making policy for people who are actually affected by it.
And
that is what all of this is.
And I think with this vote, it points to a flaw in the way that they think, because a lot of people think that they can simply manipulate through marketing campaigns and convince Black Americans, low-income Black Americans, and Hispanic Americans who live in these neighborhoods to simply go against their better interest and vote for something that is going to harm their communities. And we saw the media campaigns around Minneapolis after the George Floyd death, after the BLM riots, during the BLM riots and the mostly peaceful protests. We saw how much they were trying to convince low-income America that they don't need police officers in their neighborhoods. And guess what? It didn't work. It did not work, because Black Americans know their communities. They know their community needs. They don't want crime in their communities. They don't want their children harmed. They want everybody to be able to step out of their house safely. They want their kids to be able to go to school. They want to be able to go to the grocery store. They want to live normal lives. And they can't do that without police officers present. So again, this is just this white savior complex that is not working.
There was a time when the mainstream media would have a backbone and would come out and say, hey, all these police officers that are no longer in tow or we've defunded are making crime rates rise in Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, New York. There's a time when the mainstream media would have been all over that story and would have put out the truth. But now when you don't have that sort of support and the politics in Washington don't support you and the people who actually are trying to get this out for their own communities are silenced, you're not going to have a place where things actually get done the way that they're supposed to get done. You're going to have people who cry about defunding the police and all of these other issues that the left parrots.
Yeah.
And that's really sad because you have no one to hold any of these people accountable anymore. I'm just glad that the people in Minneapolis and just in this country in general were able to realize that, despite what these people at the top are saying, we still made the right choice and we did the right thing.
Yeah,
even with all the propaganda out there.
And it's not the first time that we've seen this happen. You saw after Georgia and their whole voter ID requirement that they wanted to push for, Black America was very much against that to the tune of 69%. 69% of Black Americans said that they were in full favor of requiring voter ID at a polling site. Yet we've tried to convince people that we don't need this or that it's racist or that it's white supremacist, just like we've done with the police, and it's not sticking. So this is full of, I'm very happy with all the results we're getting today.
Well, it's like in Virginia. I mean, they were like, they want to talk about no voter ID and like you don't need voter ID to come in and vote. And then there were people who were denied entry from voting in some of the places in Virginia for not having a mask. Oh, it's like, oh, you have to have a mask, but you can have no ID. That's totally fine.
Yep.
I mean, how does that make any sense?
And like you said before, Will, like the people who are for these absurdities of defunding the police, of banning voter ID, of critical race theory in schools, they never admit they're wrong. But what we're seeing in cases like the voters of Minneapolis rejecting it and the voters in Virginia rejecting CRT in schools is they have to be told they're wrong by the voters. And that is the only place where the pushback, that's where the rubber meets the road and where that's going to wake them up. Now they'll freak out and blame white supremacy, but it doesn't matter if they're still living in their fantasy world. We can take the real world back by voting them out.
It was like the same thing in 2016. I mean, when Trump was running for president in the primaries and he came out in South Carolina for one of his events, and it was one of the primary events. And he said, the Iraq war sucked. We shouldn't have been there. It was a disaster. And people on both sides of the aisle, the left and the right, came after him and said, this is ridiculous. I can't believe he would say this. What an idiot. And it's like the people of South Carolina knew what he was saying was actually true, right? Despite all of the major institutions and these elitists and people coming out and saying, you're an idiot. All the top Republicans with Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and these people, and even all the leftists, the hawkish leftists coming out and saying, oh, all this. People in South Carolina and across the country in general resonated with what he said and said, yes, he was exactly right. The Iraq war was a total mess and we shouldn't have been there and we did it completely wrong, right? All of this. So it's like even though the institutions and a lot of the elitists and people have these sorts of ideas like this defund the police thing that we're talking about or going to war or whatever it is, the American people have a good idea of saying, hey, just because these people are saying that doesn't mean that it's necessarily true.
Yep. They know what's right and what's wrong, and they know what's going to affect them and their families and what's going to affect the families across the nation and even worldwide. And if you can tap into that and point out the hypocrisy and point out where these ideologies are failing, they will vote in your favor. And that's been proven. 3 times now.
And that's why it's so important for the individual citizens to investigate the facts, use your own thinking, use common sense, and don't allow the media to gaslight you into thinking things that aren't true. So just rely on your own ability to investigate facts and make decisions for yourself, evaluate what's going on in the world, and don't let somebody tell you that something that is not true is true, and you're just persuaded because you hear it so many times because the lie is repeated often enough.
Right. It's like, don't trust these people too. Like the people who are in charge of city councils and like administrative bureaucrat positions, they've never worked with police departments. The people who are in charge of the border crisis and the administration in Washington, they've probably never even been to the border. The people who are like the biggest wartime strategy people in America never served in any war. And these people are supposed experts. The experts suck. The experts are losers because they've never had to actually deal with the problems that they talk about. The people who know better are the people who have actually been in these kinds of situations. You talk to the people in these communities, they'll tell you what's up. You talk to the people at the border, they'll tell you what's going on. You talk to the people, you talk to the children who were bombed in Libya, they'll tell you what's up, right? Like, you will understand what is actually going on when you talk to the people who are actually there, not these people who claim to be these experts and people talking about it, because they suck and they know nothing.
Tim Ballard's a great example too. Somebody who's actually involved in this type of work, and I'd rather take his opinion on what's going on than some politician or bureaucrat.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like you hear people on Twitter, conservative people who never go and talk to leftists. Okay, they'll say, "Well, the left thinks this," and they will straw man the left. I'm admitting this. Conservatives will straw man the left. I'm like, I actually go and I talk to thousands of people, and here's what they actually think. I wrote a book on it, like, to give people what they actually know. If we keep straw manning people and saying this is what we're fighting against, all these kind of things, it only makes it worse for everyone. Yeah. Like, the experts and people who claim to have this knowledge just don't. They've never actually experienced it.
It's very true. Now, here's something we're all experiencing in our news circuit across the world, and that is the issue of vaccinated or unvaccinated, and should we mandate vaccines? Here's yet another piece of good news. I'm giving you all good news, guys. Here is out of CNN Business. 72% of unvaccinated workers vow to quit if ordered to get vaccinated. So there was a survey put out by the Kaiser Family Foundation. And in this survey, they found that 30% of unvaccinated workers say they will quit their jobs if forced to either get vaccinated or take weekly COVID tests. And if an employer was set to put out mandates on vaccinations and don't offer a testing option, 72% of unvaccinated workers say they will quit their jobs.
Awesome.
It's a big win.
What are you going to do? I think some businesses will double down and say, who cares? Doesn't matter. And then they can bring in cheap labor who's going to get vaccinated and do it anyway. And then you're going to have some businesses that won't cave. And they'll say, yeah, we're going to stand up and we're not going to enforce this. The Daily Wire just put through their lawsuit right now with the administration about vaccine mandates for over 100 employees. So there are companies doing good things. Canada's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
Canada's, they're not like America. They don't have the same rights that Americans have in Canada.
But there's good news coming out of Canada too right now.
There is good news coming out of Canada right now. Here are two headlines. Breaking. Ford says...
are we not just talking about Canada?
We're not just talking about
I thought you mentioned that in the Canadian stuff.
This is America. America, 72% of unvaccinated workers say they will not be vaccinated. They will not get vaccinated and they will quit their job if it is mandated. By the way,
that's just so obvious. Like, if you wanted to get the protection that the vaccine affords, by now you've had plenty of time to do so for free anytime you want. And so the only people left are people who have consciously decided not to. And so if you take a survey of them, it stands to reason that 70+% would literally rather quit their job than be forced to get a jab that they've looked at the evidence, they've looked at the facts for themselves, and they've made a decision not to.
And it points back to what we just talked about of like, question what you hear from the media, because what the media will do is paint this in the light of, oh, these idiots are willing to quit their jobs and instead of just getting a safe and healthy vaccine for them. And some of them won't even report on this. They won't even report on the Southwest Airlines not being able to fulfill their flights, or American Airlines not being able to do the same, or all these companies and literal countries backing out on their vaccine mandates. They won't report on it because they want you to do something with your body. And if they want you to do something with your body, they're not going to talk about the fight that's happening behind the scenes, but the fight is happening.
And they get a ton of their ad revenue from Big Pharma.
Yes.
I mean, if they now are they want to give vaccines to 5 to 11-year-olds.
Yep.
Which is the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. I mean, you have the chances of you dying as a 5 to 11-year-old, for all my 5 to 11-year-olds watching the show right now, the chances of you dying are so slim. I mean, it is a statistical anomaly. It is literally a statistical anomaly for you to perish from this disease. And to think that they now want to give vaccines to you guys and make even more billions of dollars off of this is absolutely crazy. If they mandate the vaccines for children 5 to 11, which I'm sure Los Angeles will say for kids, because they already did for 12 to 18-year-olds in schools starting in January for students in Los Angeles. But if they do it for 5 to 11-year-olds, they will feel people's wrath. There will be vengeance laid upon the people who are trying to do this. I can guarantee you, if they try and come out and say we're going to mandate this for 5 to 11-year-olds, I mean, I saw it in San Francisco. Some businesses are now mandating that if a 5 to 11-year-old comes into the business, they have to be vaccinated.
It's ridiculous.
That's insane.
It is insane.
That is insane.
Yeah, I don't know.
We live in a sick country.
The second that things start to infringe upon the rights of children, that's when we're really, really going to see things start to get fired up, especially when it comes to the moms here in California and across the nation. They are not going to allow this to happen. They simply won't. I think we stay quiet a lot of times when it comes to businesses with over 100 employees because they're adults. And we don't care as much about adults as we do about children. So when children start to enter this realm, when it comes to vaccine mandates, it's going to get very interesting.
Just one other point on this, Joel, while we're on it, is the influenza is more lethal to kids than COVID is by all available data. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at some from Georgia right now, and they had 16 kids death from COVID and 1,299 kids in the same period from the flu. And so the idea that you would mandate a vaccine for COVID, but not for the flu for children is completely insanity on its face, just by pure logic. It's if you're really interested in public health, then the numbers demand that you mandate influenza vaccines before you'd mandate COVID.
Because they can make the COVID vaccine for $1 and sell it to the government for $25.
Yep.
I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Money.
Yeah, money makes the world go round. Money turns your best friend down.
Oh my gosh, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, and I haven't heard any flu numbers this year. Nothing from mainstream media.
Are all screwed up anyway.
Nothing from mainstream media.
It is
such a cluster.
A mess. It is such a mess.
Like death counts and everything is just like so unclear.
Yeah,
and it's because,
who knows?
It's because they won't be transparent and be honest about any data point. So
they don't have to.
Annihilated public trust, and all the numbers that they put out are so obfuscated, and they try to suppress the things that they don't like, and they're not forthright about the stuff that hurts their narrative, and it's all about narrative and control.
And that's something, like, as a person who used to work in medicine, like you have to think about the long-term repercussions in terms of our annual report when it comes to deaths. We are now skewed when it comes to coronary heart disease. We're skewed when it comes to diabetes. We're skewed when it comes to cancer. We're skewed when it comes to the flu. We're skewed when it comes to car accidents. We're skewed when it comes to work incidents. We have no idea who died and of what, because we know the doctors and hospitals are lying.
I mean, we're supposed to be in the richest, most wealthy country in the world, and the way that we treat people medically is disgusting. The way that things are approved by the FDA, and the way that our food is in this country, and our medicine, I mean, it is handled worse than so many other countries. I mean, look at how they handle it in Nordic countries. Look at the things that they ban that we have in our products here in America, but they ban in their country because they know that it's harmful. Like the plastics in water bottles and all sorts of things. They keep food in, and so many different things that are banned in other countries that are fine here. I mean, because it's built on lies, and these people don't have to be accountable. It's like you were saying, Taylor, like it's all lying, and no one holds any of them accountable, because they say it's a fight of right versus left. It's a fight of right versus left, and you got to join Republicans or Democrats. It's like, it's not. It is so much more than that. It is the same people are doing the exact same stuff and then telling you that it's different, slapping you in the face continually and thinking that it's good for you.
Right.
We handle the healthcare and the food and all of that in this country so poorly, you guys have no idea. It is absolutely terrible compared to other places around the world. We have the most obese population. I mean, the most people getting heart disease and dying of it. Ugh, man.
But let's make public health all about getting a jab and not about telling people they need to work out and reduce their comorbidities.
You can get a Happy Meal.
Change the narrative.
Get a Happy Meal for like $2.50, and buying an avocado is like the same price.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what the hell is that? How can you get something that is so horrible and bad for you and disgusting, and then have something that's like good for you and healthy be the same price? And it's like one little thing. You can't survive off avocados yourself. But I'm saying, like, a whole meal is the same price as like one avocado. How does that make any sense?
Will's gonna run on a platform of free avocados for all.
Yeah, literally. Well, I'll give them the seed.
Tax the hell out of McDonald's.
Yeah. But like
I love me a Happy Meal when I was a kid. I'm not gonna lie.
No, of course. But I'm saying, I mean, it's addictive. And
of course,
gross.
yeah,
but like
it's addictive.
the stuff, like, look at Cheerios. Like, I was just talking to someone yesterday. Like, the ingredients that are in Cheerios in America are different than the ingredients that are in Cheerios in the UK. Because certain products are allowed, certain things are allowed in America that aren't allowed in food in other places. It's like, it's terrible. It is legitimately terrible.
Why are you trying to take away my Cheerios and my McDonald's, man?
Before we get too
'Cause it's
lost
bad
in the
for you.
sauce when it comes to food, we might have to come back to this segment. I'm going to step out of America for a second.
We should watch that Academy of Ideas video about all the
about
men losing
Monsanto
testosterone
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
stuff.
No, it's very good.
Maybe we'll do that on another episode on this show. We will do a deep dive into the American food industry because there's a lot to learn and a lot to talk about when it comes to that. But let's step out of America, back to the fight against vaccine mandates. We're stepping into Canada. Breaking, Ford says Ontario will not mandate vaccines for healthcare workers. That's out of Ontario. And out of Quebec, COVID-19, Quebec drops vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. This is two big wins.
And did you see the reason why? I think look for what the official who wrote the thing said. Basically, it was like after looking at they did a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, the amount of employees they would lose is not worth
exactly
the amount of people they'd whatever.
Yeah, the marginal benefit of forcing the tiny remnant of people who have not yet been vaccinated to get vaccinated would not give more benefit than I don't know, you said it better the second ago.
Yeah, no, people all heard it the first time.
Yeah.
They understand what I'm saying. The benefit is not enough.
Yeah, of losing like
all those
a huge
employees,
chunk of your healthcare workers, which you said, like, it's one thing if you can replace cheap labor at a restaurant. It's another thing if it's like a professionally trained healthcare worker or a pilot. Like these are things that take years to turn around and train people, and you can't just plug someone else back in if they get fired. And having a you're worried about flights getting canceled on the pilot front, but in the healthcare worker front, now you're talking about people not getting the care that they actually need for things that are actually killing them, which is not COVID.
Right. Well, that's exactly what they do. They can do something like this. They can make people lose their job, and then they can bring in unskilled labor from all around the world to their countries and have them be the new laborers. But it's like the truck drivers in America right now. Like the truck drivers are losing their jobs, and they're super worried about not having enough truck drivers. Part of the reason was supply chain issues, because truck drivers, a lot of them, there's a shortage. And they feel like they can just replace these people. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we should teach the truck drivers how to code. You know, if we just teach the truck drivers how to code, all our problems will be fixed.
Learn to code.
This is like the elites in this country. They're like, well, the world is changing. We can just bring in immigrants and then train the truck drivers to code.
Right.
It's like, that's not how it works. That's not how this works. You understand? Like, you're hollowing out America by the things that you are preaching about, this new future that you're talking about. It's not worth it.
No, it is not worth it. And in many ways, what's happening with these vaccine mandates and the push for them is a threat to public safety. Somebody who has pointed that out and brought that to the forefront is an LA County sheriff. Here's the article. LA County sheriff says vaccine mandate is a threat to public safety. He will not enforce it. This is a big win, especially for Los Angeles.
I'm speaking at the firefighter, sheriff, and police rally on Monday in Los Angeles at 10 a.m. at Grand Park. If you guys are in LA, it's supposed to be about 10,000 people there. People who are the firefighters and all the police officers who are saying no. And even the ones who might have gotten the vaccine and said, I'm still going to stand with them for not getting fired. They're all going to be there. That's 10 a.m. at Grand Park in Los Angeles on Monday.
We will be there. Come and meet us.
Let me read a DM I have from a friend who is a police officer in Los Angeles. I will not say his name. Hey man, I heard Will is speaking at a anti-mandate rally on the 8th. Really appreciate the work you guys at PragerU are doing and the things you stand for. If you can pass on this message, I'd appreciate it. So here I am passing it on.
There you go.
He also said, if you guys are hiring, I might need to look for a new job come December 18th.
Yeah.
That's sad, but also funny. It's funny in the context. He's got a sense
of humor about it. But I mean, that's right on the nose of what you're talking about.
I know.
Yeah, so
this is a real world. This is a real like I've known him since before he was a cop. This is a real people are being affected by this.
It is very real, and I think in order to get a grasp on the scope of how real it is, here is what this county sheriff is saying. So his name is Sheriff Alex Villanueva. In case you guys want to shout him out, give him some love for what he's doing right now. Let's look at the numbers when it comes to deputies, and this is about retirement. This is about workers' compensation. Anything you can think of when it comes to policing is outlined in this article. You can go and check it out. So from October 2019 to October 2020, there were only 515 police retirements. From October 2020 to October 2021, there were 617 retirements. That's a difference of 102 deputies. And People may say, well, I don't care, defund the police, who cares? And we need to reform the police anyway, so it's a great thing that they're leaving right now. These 102 deputies, most of them have at least 28 years of experience in the field. So what you are losing is the most experienced police officers who have been in their job for a matter of 28 years without really any complaint or extreme incident. That's what you're losing.
We're all replaceable. That's what it is. We're all replaceable.
But see, what you lose is now you have a less resourced group of officers who are going to be under more stress, and they don't have experience to draw from to be able to do more with less. And so it's like a double problem, because you're having you're replacing them with new recruits who are coming into policing like God knows why at this point, when everyone hates you, like what kind of person you have to be. I mean, good on you, I guess, if you're willing to go there. But yeah, the fact that you're getting rid of the most experienced officers when there's already a shortage, and you're under-resourcing the new group it's a recipe for disaster, and it's so obvious.
These people just hate middle America. They literally hate the middle class. These people in charge. They literally hate us. They hate us for not being one of them, and they want to replace us. That's exactly what it is. I mean, they don't care about any of us.
And not only is it going to affect your streets and your communities, it's going to affect your pockets, because there's workers' comp claims that are paid with our taxes by the government. Workers' compensation claims are also on the rise and have increased by 21.9% this last year. He stated that from October 2019 to October 2020, there was 1,434 worker compensation claims. And as of October 2020 to October 2021, there is 1,749, many of whom attributed it to the vaccine mandates.
Yeah. Well, the pensions are already about to burst in California. I mean, that's a huge issue with government spending and promising all these pensions to people and not having the money to do so. So, I mean, it's already in a state of where it's all about to explode.
It is. And here is one more fact from this article. Sheriff Villanueva cautioned that there are 4,185 staff members, both sworn and professional, who may be subjected to termination because of the vaccine mandate. 3,137 of the 4,185 are sworn deputies.
Isn't that crazy?
3,100 sworn deputies are facing termination. So what you're getting is 3,100 rookies out of the police academy replacing these tenured
If they can even get them through
officers.
the police academy in that fast.
Yes, if you can even get them.
That's wild.
I'll be there on Monday. I'll be there protesting on Monday.
And as they should be. Like, this is your call. This is your call to arms right now. You should be fighting this. You need to fight this, because it's going to affect you. It's going to affect everybody. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated, unvaccinated, pro-mandate, anti-mandate. You should see that this is going to impact you negatively. I don't care if you're sitting watching the show right now and you go, I'm 100% pro-mandate. You should be able to weigh the risk versus benefit assessment on this and see that the risk of you losing protection in your community is far greater than your risk of getting COVID. Simple as that. Doesn't matter where you lie on this issue.
Yeah, and I mean, it's only been a year or like 18 months since this entire city was engulfed in flames, and every business was boarded up because of rampant looting and chaos. And what do you think is going to happen when you have 3,137 deputies that are no longer doing their jobs, when they're already strapped for, like, we went to South Central LA with the police there, and they're like, the biggest, our mere presence deters crime. So thinning out the police officer encourages crime. And this is, you're literally, it's like the same thing of during an unemployment crisis. Oh, well, what should we do? Oh, let's do this vaccine mandate that's going to cause thousands and millions of people to get fired. You're literally making the problem that's already there way worse. And it's the same thing we're seeing here in LA with the police vaccine mandate. I've yet to see any positive, even at a population level, positive outcomes associated with vaccine mandates. I just see it creating chaos and ruining everything.
We live in a sick country.
We do. Needs a cure, and the cure is not the jab.
The cure is eating healthy. Food is medicine.
Now, before we get into our Thursday segment, which is Throwback Thursday, I got to shout out our new Otto's Tales books. These are for your children. If you're finding that your children's education is overrun by gender theory and critical race theory, we have a solution for you, and that is PragerU Kids. You can go to prageru.com/kids, sign up for our prep program if you want a little bit of extra resources for your children. That's only $25 a year, but The good news is you can get PragerU Kids content without even paying for it. It is all free. We have shows, we have digital magazines, and we have books for your youngins. This book is Otto's Tales. Today is Veterans Day. Here is the Amazon for it if you guys want to look it up. We have a paperback and a Kindle version that is now selling for $9.99. And our Otto's Tales books are doing great on Amazon. We've hit #1 book multiple times with our kids content. So it's a great way for your kids to learn true American history in a way that is age appropriate.
Yes, and when is Veterans Day, Amala?
That is a great question.
Next Thursday, November 11th. I did have to Google it. But so you've got a week. If you order the book today, you'll get it in time for Veterans Day. And you can read the book with your kid. Today is Veterans Day.
Yeah.
And also use that link, that specific link in the comments, because it is a referral link. And I think we'll get some kickback to PragerU or some other good stuff like that. So
yes,
it's another
absolutely.
way to support us.
Yeah, it's something we should be talking about. Veterans and military personnel are also being affected by what's going on right now in our current state. So teach your kids about Veterans Day. Give them some appreciation for the people who have served our country. Now we're getting into Throwback Thursday. I figured there's a lot of dreary blah, blah, blah. I don't want to talk about something too serious for Throwback Thursday today. I saw Jordan Peterson did a recent podcast where he talked about the current state of dating and dating apps in America. So I figured let's take a trip back for Throwback Thursday and talk about old school dating practices. I found this really cool video by the History Channel where they went through Victorian era dating rules, and it's so different from how we live today. So I figured we'd go through some of those rules and see where we're at currently as a society. So here's Throwback Thursday, Victorian era dating. Rule number 1. Do not make love with more than one woman at a time. Now,
What is this?
Now, this may seem obvious, right, through the modern day lens, but the term make love meant a completely different thing in Victorian era dating. The term make love simply referred to trying to offer courtship to a woman. This includes flirting, talking to a woman without being introduced, giving her gifts, anything of the sort. So do not give gifts, flirt with, or talk to a woman more than one at a time.
That's great advice.
So basically, don't slide in one girl's DMs.
Right.
More than one girl's DMs at a time.
Which is totally
Don't
not the case.
match with multiple people on Tinder and talk to them at the same time.
Exactly. Only
Yeah.
one girl on Tinder.
Look at the
Once you get one
juxtaposition.
match, you just pursue that until it's dead, and then
Delete the
move
app.
on to the next one.
Right. So this is the 1800s, and now we give men the exact opposite advice of like join Tinder, join Hinge, message all the girls the same pickup line at the same time.
Swipe, swipe.
Well, I don't know if they're
swipe,
telling
swipe.
people to do that.
But it's
That's just what
that's
they
what's
do.
normal.
that's
just
what's
what they
normal.
do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what's normalized, and that's what a lot of people encourage. It's just like go for, sort of like birdshot, let all the targets
That's a
hit
great
with him.
gun ammo reference.
Thank you.
Amala, I'm
I know a little
impressed.
bit about a little bit.
She somewhat does.
As opposed to a slug
As opposed to a slug.
or a sniper rifle.
So yeah, it's totally different. And our definition of make love is a totally different definition than that one. Here's the next rule for you guys. Women should turn down gifts from their suitors. This could be seen as a bribe. So what men used to do... This could be seen as a bribe for affection. What men used to do in Victorian eras is, first of all, a woman will be introduced either by a family member or by another gentleman in their community. And they would meet this gentleman and he would then become a suitor. What suitors would do is then shower these women with gifts to show their appreciation before there was even any mention of courtship. So they would shower these women with gifts, some expensive, some not. And what these women were expected to do was to always give the gift back to the suitor, so you weren't seen as cheap or bribable. And if you got a gift anonymously, which sometimes these suitors would leave it on women's doorsteps, they were meant to take the gift, hide it away, and never to look at it.
This is literally just thought Twitch streamers getting like money on Patreon. It's the exact same thing. Just all these
It's the
men
same
coming
thing.
and giving them gifts.
I think our
Tale as old as
standards.
time.
Beauty and the Beast.
I think it's a little different though. Men don't give you gifts anymore, pre-dating at all.
I feel like this is exactly something Will would do. Just like shower some girl with gifts and compliments.
Is this what
to
you
win
do,
her
Will?
over, manipulate her emotionally, and
I give her gifts. I give her gifts of my presents. that
Oh,
she
okay.
loves,
Yeah, no, he
you know?
doesn't give actual presents to these women. But it's okay because apparently they shouldn't accept them anyways. But
Today-
men don't do it anymore.
Well, today is a gift. That's why we call it the present.
Oh,
You're welcome.
my goodness.
So you're welcome.
Yeah,
Judy.
no, the standards are much lower for men these days. You would never even fathom. If a man gave me a gift before asking me out on a date, I would be like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I don't know if I totally agree with
What if he
that.
shows up with flowers? Is that nice?
No, that's nice.
No, that's very nice.
That's a gift.
Yeah. But you're supposed to turn it down. Unless you see him as somebody who you're going
Just
to
throw
court.
him in the trash.
Oh, gross.
Just be like, no, I couldn't possibly. And if he insists, then you take it.
No, sir.
No,
You
sir.
should be doing this whole segment in a Victorian accent.
Okay, I'll do the next one in a Victorian accent. Here's the next one. Throwback Thursday. A lady must never approach a man unless introduced.
This is
Based.
true.
That's true.
So technically, we should not even be talking on this podcast right now because I was not introduced to you.
No, Taylor introduced you to me.
And
But who introduced me to Taylor?
Sabrina?
Ah, there we go.
There you go.
So a woman introduced me, so it's fitting.
Yeah, it all works.
It
out.
works. Yeah, so you could never, in today's time, a woman could look at a man from across the bar and be like, oh, that man is fine as hell. Let me go walk up to that man. You can't do that in Victorian era. What you would have to do is find somebody. You would have to express your interest and then find somebody to introduce you.
I love that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of
Let's do
cool?
that. I'm just picturing like a ball scene from a Victorian movie, like Pride and Prejudice or something.
Right, like you just catch
You have to
eyes.
introduce me.
Yeah, right.
Mary, you
that's
have to
it.
introduce me to that gentleman over there.
And the men would do the same for the woman.
Sir William. Who's that
Hello.
fine lass across the
Now
room?
it's like, yo, what up, girl? You up?
Singer.
What are you doing?
That's so tragic.
Want to come over?
Now he just slides in the DMs.
I know.
Ugh.
Just flexes. Will
I'm
shows
just
a picture of him
I'm
with
just
his
gonna
beamer.
start doing group chats.
Okay.
I'll, like it'll be me and Taylor in a group chat with like a girl.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I'll be like, Taylor is introducing me to you. And then it all works out, you know?
Is that why you started that group chat with me and Scott the other day?
Yeah. Exactly. Had to make sure we all knew each other.
Oh my gosh. Next one. During courtship, a gentleman can only touch the woman if the road is uneven and he must offer up his hand. So no touching of any sort unless the road is
You
uneven.
just got to go on some rough roads, man.
Exactly.
Easy.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, I didn't know this
Oh, no,
park
I-
was going to be so jagged.
No, I always take the 405. All right, man. I hope you guys understand my LA references.
Yeah, so no touching of any sort, no hugging, no kissing during the courtship. So what you do is introduction, then you have courtship, then you have engagement, and then you have marriage. So no touching until engagement. And even then, engagement touching is just like hugging, hand holding, things like that.
Right. And by the time you finally find a wife, you've been drafted to go fight in the Napoleonic Wars and you probably died of the cold. What is the point of all of this?
He's like dead of yellow fever or
Yeah,
cholera before you even
exactly.
get the chance.
You know? It's like, geez.
Oh, it's tragic.
Based.
It's a little base, but wow, that's rough. That is rough.
There's something interesting.
What?
This is unrelated, but
Okay.
it's related
Oh, gosh,
to
you
Napoleon.
always give
Well,
unrelated
sorry,
things.
Napoleon,
Why
he
don't
was
you
able
save
to go
this?
all across the country, all across Europe, take over countries, go to Russia, fail, get exiled, come back, take over the French crown again, all in the same amount of time that the U.S. has still been in Afghanistan.
Well, bet he never held a woman's hand though.
He did actually.
No, I'm sure he held many women's hand. I'm sure many men did not abide by these rules.
Right.
These were just the cultural standards.
Right.
Also, that is impressive for he's a short king.
He actually wasn't that short.
How short was he?
He was average. It was like, that was like a ploy. Used
What is
by
your
his-
definition of average?
Like-
Taylor's now looking up how tall was Napoleon.
No, he wasn't like the short person that people.
5'6".
But that's,
No, he wasn't really 5'6".
Napoleon
Okay.
height 5'6",
No,
according
he
to Google.
wasn't really 5'6". It was a lie used by his enemies.
then why is the lie still persisting? Why wouldn't they correct it?
Because they
Why
don't
would they
correct-
say he's 5'6"?
Because history is decided by the victors and Napoleon lost.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
He's exiled.
Next, Throwback Thursday rule. An unmarried girl must never be out with a man at night.
When do you go out with her?
During the day. And often with a chaperone.
You take her to tea.
So here's some rules that I didn't include in here. Okay, so you'd be introduced to this unmarried girl, right? Okay, you'd say, I'm interested in courting this unmarried girl without giving her any gifts. She would accept your courtship. And if she accepted your courtship, you could come to her house or she could come to yours, but only with a family member present. You could not be alone with said girl without family member present. And when you take her out, there must be some sort of chaperone or some sort of shared agreement of where you will be going and what time of day.
apparently this girl is so great that I have to do all these different things. This girl probably sucks.
And this is why marriages were so strong for the most part back then. We're not looking at this whole 60% divorce rate like we're looking at right now in America, because there were so many steps. You had to truly believe you were in love with this girl before you even talked about engagement and courtships.
This is like the aristocracy.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And those people did nothing.
But these rules also were...
They had all the time in the world to do
with
stupid
lower income
things
people,
like this.
these rules were also largely held and abided by as well. Just saying. Even with the lowly peasants, there was a cultural norm for how you dated and how you married. Although not this enshrouded in aristocracy.
It's definitely not.
No, not as much. But
No.
there are still rules. Still rules. But anyways, you can't go out. Once the night is broken, thou shalt not be with a woman.
You better get there before the sunrise.
Okay, here's another one. If engaged, a gentleman should try his best not to look at another girl. At any time. Literally ever.
Oh, just like look.
Like, not even look.
What are these rules? Of course you're going to look at another woman before.
It is said
Haven't
that...
you seen Dennis Prager's video, He Wants You?
Okay, see, that's modernity.
I think it's even talking about that non-sexually, just like looking at
non-sexually.
Yeah.
a
you
grandma
should try.
walking across the
I
street.
know.
Like,
But it's like even
no,
if
I
a
couldn't
man,
possibly.
if a man
Yes.
looks at another woman, it doesn't mean that he doesn't want to marry you.
No,
That's
but
just how
it's
the
just
male
saying,
brain works.
what is perceived is that this woman that you are courting or engaged or marrying is meant to carry all your attention at any point that you can give it to her. This
But
is
it's
what these books
impossible.
write. At any point that you could be giving your lover attention with the ideal of courting or being married, you should give her as much attention as possible.
I
It's
think there's
impossible.
wisdom in that.
There's wisdom, but it's
wisdom in that.
impossible. If a woman walks by, you're at the beach and she's in a swimsuit, and you have a girlfriend or a wife, you're gonna look at her for a second,
You
think in
know
your
that-
head she's
okay,
hot.
that's
and
a
then
whole-
5 seconds later she's gone. And
They
you never see her
mean
again.
sort of like extended or trying to introduce yourself to other women, trying to flirt with other women.
Well,
it's
of course,
it's
that's true
beyond.
today.
That's a granted.
It's you know what I
know.
mean.
Well, you
know what I
said
mean.
look.
Yes.
You
It's
should have
more
used
extreme.
that.
It's more extreme in this day and age. They did not want you to prolongly look at a woman or do anything of that sort. But even look at her was sort of taboo.
Yeah.
But
well, I still
It's
I still
impossible.
think you shouldn't oogle. There's a difference between
Oh, of
like
course.
noticing and oogling.
right.
And so I don't think that you can use that whole framework as a justification for.
No, you're
oogling.
not like-
Because it's a
This
slippery
isn't like
slope. Will.
This isn't like Wile E. Coyote and your jaw drops to the
Yeah.
floor and your tongue rolls out like an old school cartoon. This is just like, oh. And you're like, well, you only look once. Unless she's really hot. Then you look twice. But
Unless it's
it-
Scott walking by. Maybe double take.
Oh my gosh.
Scott. No.
Okay. And here's the last one. In a relationship, intelligence is not at all required, neither any interest in politics. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how men perceive women.
Sounds like Will's ideal girl.
Right.
Exactly.
No intelligence needed.
Dumb and apolitical.
Just a vegetable.
So basically, obviously with the aristocracy, what was valued was beauty and status. So Duke and Duchess and things like that. That's what people would seek out, and they would look at families of the same socioeconomic status, women that would have a really good dowry if married, and that would be how they matched up.
See, this undermines all of the other rules.
What do you mean?
Because if you have all these steps and all these things you have to do, and then at the end of the day, her intelligence and her political views don't matter at all, it's like then all of that is useless.
But I would say
Literally useless.
I would say even though this rule is stipulated that intelligence is not important, neither is interest in politics, men tend to find women who match their intelligence and their political interests. And this is seen in like old school Victorian writings when husbands write about their wives. They talk about, I think at the end of the day, people look for true love regardless of what the cultural norm is stipulated in dating. Like people look for a woman that they fall in love with that matches their intelligence.
We wouldn't have Romeo and Juliet if that weren't true.
Right. And it's the same thing for...
That was a Renaissance, not Victorian London.
It's older.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Renaissance is
That's what I'm
older
saying.
than
It's
I just think it's human nature.
Yeah, exactly.
And we look at it in old school leaders and generals, their wives, they always talk about behind every man is a great woman who, you know, a lot of whom pull the strings when they're making decisions or at least help. So I think men still look for that regardless. You know?
I see that, but it seems like that just undermines it. If you're
Why?
not supposed to care about her political affiliation or if she's smart,
Well, what would happen?
Why does any of the other stuff even matter?
You would look for the women who have status first. Then you would look for the beautiful ones that have status. And then you would look for the ones that match your intelligence, your humor, your politics.
And you're saying that's better than what it is today.
I'm not saying that that's better. I'm just saying that is what it is.
That's much worse.
That is worse, but there's a lot of things that are better.
I think people still do that, regardless.
Of course they still do that. But I'm saying, like, the way that it's in this is like, that's the way it has to be. I don't go around looking for a woman with status.
I know, but that's just because if you lived back then, you would.
Yes.
Right, and I'm saying that's not better.
Yeah,
that's not better than it is today. That's worse. That's a worse standard to go by.
I mean, it's not
purely on the status one. I agree for sure.
But who's to say that it's not the standard of today? I think most women look for status.
No, women do.
Women do. That's fine. This is about men finding women. Men shouldn't be looking for women with status.
Men look for beauty far sooner than they look for intelligence.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
But back then too, like you marry as a man, you want to elevate your status, and a way to do that is marrying a woman with status, and so that was another factor of it.
Right. No, I get why they would do it. I'm just saying it's not better.
No, but I think some of the practical like courtship stuff was better. There's a lot of wisdom in that we disregard today, like because today's like wild wild west, and people just follow their impulses, and I think that's dumb.
Right. It just feels like it undermines all the other stuff.
I don't think it undermines it.
I don't think at the end of the day it does, because even if you decide to enter the courtship, you have to go through this whole phase of simply getting to know somebody. You cannot touch them. You cannot do anything outside of that. All your events are during the day. There's no nightly encounters or anything like that. So even so, you would have to, and you can end a courtship, of course. So even so, you'd have to deduce whether or not this person is the person for you. And at the end of the day, even though the rules stipulate otherwise, men look for a woman who is beautiful and matches their intelligence and interests.
This is why there's no more aristocracies like that around the world, because they've all been overthrown by their decadence and immoral nature. These people, all they did every day was party all damn day. These aristocrats. You're not wrong. And take advantage of poor people. They would tax poor people all day. That's literally all they did all day, so that they could do their parties all night. They want to tell us about standards of love and romance when it's all about status. No.
I just think there's some wisdom in it. There is. Obviously not this last one. I think it's just an interesting one.
My favorite book takes place in Victorian London, 1891. Picture of Dorian Gray. I mean, it's a pretty clear indication of how these people acted. It's useless people. They literally do nothing.
Not everything is useless. The dating advice is useful in a lot of ways. But anyways, guys,
Amala.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. No, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm just enjoying giving my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. That is Throwback Thursday. I hope you guys enjoyed all of the silver lining stories that we talked about today, as well as our interview with Tim Ballard and our fun Victorian era dating Throwback Thursday. If you guys like it, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single day when we go live, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. And we have a survey down below. If you really, really like the show, tell us you really like the show. Even if you hate it, tell us what you hate about the show. Tell us what segments you want to see. Tell us what other PragerU videos that you watch on our platforms. And if you would rather listen than watch, go to Google Play, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. Let everybody know that you love the show. Let us know that you love the show. And if you have a youngin' who needs some education on Veterans Day, I need some education on Veterans Day, clearly, because I didn't know what day Veterans Day was. So buy our Otto's Tales book that's available on Amazon. We do have a lot of #1 selling Otto's Tales books. It's called Today is Veterans Day with Little Dennis and Little Otto. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Don't go looking at women now.